We are live. So welcome to the Thursday night hangout with Nerys, myself, Luke Hatfield, or L3D _help _guide because I hate it. That's my new YouTube channel name. But and we have Corey and Ben with Creality with us tonight.
Hi.
So this wasn't very well advertised in front of this for the streaming. So we'll sort of work our way through the introductions more formally, and then if we have any questions, we'll start working on those and take off from there. We're looking for audience questions for the most part, but Chris and I have something that I have here that we can discuss to kill some time also. So that'll be sort of a fun surprise for people. So Chris, why don't you go ahead and go through all of your social media access points and that kind of stuff, so people will know where to be able to find you later on if they want.
Nerys.com. That links to everything.
Awesome.
I finally got off my lazy butt and put up a launching page.
All right. Yeah, so I'm pretty easy to find. I'm either at the Facebook groups, or you can find me with my given name of Luke Hatfield on Facebook. I don't do all the other media stuff, so you only find me on Facebook or YouTube. Facebook. Oops, somebody's feeding it back in.
I just brought it up for a second to bring up the chat.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. There should be an internal chat with all of the sources blended together.
Oh, yeah.
On the
live comments.
Yeah, and that brings in from the Facebook and from the YouTube. So Corey, you're next.
Next, or is that next for what?
Poke.
You got to introduce yourself and tell us what you do for Creality.
What I do for Creality?
Yeah, your job.
You see that I do the live every day, and I found that I don't know what time for me right now, UK time or Europe time. I have the time difference right now. Every day I just come here and I feel confused. Is that morning right now or it's evening time? And then I need to say hi to you guys, and then I say good morning or good evening. I have to sit down here and think about it.
It depends on where you're at. So for me personally, it's like 7 p.m. West Coast time. Chris is an hour later than me. He's at 8 o'clock. And I'm guessing we're going to have people chiming in that are in overseas that it's in the middle of the night or whatever. I don't know. Yes. I don't have them memorized.
Happy victims from all over the world.
Yeah. I think months ago, when first time we met Chris here, he said happy victim. I do not know what he means. Now I know. I will not tell.
It's kind of this kind of came from Steve Jobs. Apple fans, who they call, would erect a reality distortion field around themselves. So I kind of adopted that for myself, RDF.
Oh.
So the idea is that the purpose of any company in the world is to take your money. That means you're a victim.
Yeah.
But it just so happens, if you give people what they want, they willingly let you take their money happily. So happy victims.
Okay.
Okay. Nice.
I finally know that that's official. Yeah.
All right. So, like I said, not a huge formal agenda for tonight. I do have a sort of surprise once everybody's sort of starts filtering in here. I'll go mobile. If I don't trip over anything and kill myself, you'll get to see what the surprise is. So don't come and go too quick if you want to see what the surprise is. But yeah. So Chris, some people wouldn't know your sort of history with Creality. Now, I know you're not like a formal employee or whatever, but you have a relationship with them like a lot of us do. And as far as I understand it, you had a lot to do with the core idea of what has become the Ender 3 Pro. You want to tell that sort of backstory a little bit? Tell people what it was, what
I
went on
actually got to meet some of those critters. They sent people to, I think it was Earth. Yeah, it was Earth. Yeah. So they sent people to Earth, and I spent like an hour and a half talking to them, going over, the things that I would change on the printer, the things I would improve, the corrections I would make. And for example, like the original machine, the SD card was at the bottom of the machine. and us big fat American hands have a lot of trouble grabbing that little tiny card at the bottom. So I was like, flip it over. And then that'll also mean the fan holes are on the bottom and you won't have stuff dropping inside the printer. And, different things like that. And they pretty much incorporated everything.
Nice.
So the only thing I didn't like was the flexible bed. I mean, it works great until you print something big, and then
yeah, that's the problem. Yeah.
But now they have the steel plates and they work great.
Yeah, the flex plates are nice for sure. All right, so I want to give you a chance to get that history out. Not everybody knows about that, and I know that it wasn't exactly what you told them or whatever, so we're not holding you accountable if somebody doesn't like any of those features.
Well, if they don't like it, I could eat them.
Yep.
Yeah.
Have we got any questions filtering in yet? So between Chris and I, we can help a lot with mechanical issues and other questions that people might have if they need help. If I've been doing my job really well in the Facebook groups, there shouldn't be a whole lot of people that need help, but you never know. People filter in from all over the place. So that being said, I guess I'll plug my stuff just real quick because I'm not doing the output to my YouTube or anything. So I do have my help guide. It's a 128-page help guide, particularly pointed towards Creality and the clones of Creality, because a lot of them are that same i3 form factor and share a lot of similarities, right? So that is hosted currently at TH3D Studios in their knowledge base. They're kind enough to host it for me, so I don't have to pay a monthly subscription fee to keep it out there for people to use. So thank them for that. And then I'm found out and about through all of Creality's Facebook groups and others. So I'm currently, my current count, I think, is 32 Facebook groups that are Creality related that I admin. A few that aren't Creality also. But anyhow, so I enjoy doing that. I get a chance to help people online. And occasionally, if I choose to, I'll have people contact me by PM and do close-in help if they're really struggling or whatever. I try not to let people get to that stage, but occasionally they just pop up and they're about ready to bounce the printer or whatever, and I take them under my wing. And generally, when they come out of it, people ask, "What did you do to your machine? Why is it running so good?" or whatever. So they go from not being able to print to printing better than some of their peers in the end if it works out well. So I like that.
120 pages is a lot of work.
It was. I never did a formal hour count on it, but my best estimate that I have probably over 200 hours into putting it together.
250, 300 hours, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm getting ready to do a rewrite on it, so I'm going to be adding some new content. I developed some of the content in there, even on the last...
Dual drive on the Ender 5s would be wonderful.
Yeah, on the Ender 5 going dual drive would be excellent. Yes. I actually have a thing I was experimenting with where I put a linear rail on the opposite side with sort of a bracket, and it's helping with the deflection. Like I can put a 2 pound 1 kilogram roll on there. So if I put a dial indicator on it, so stock bed with a 2 kilo thing, I mean it's going to move, right? Because you're putting a lot of weight on those springs and cantilever, so it moves about 35 or 40 thousandths of an inch. By doing those lower support printable arms and the other thing that I added on with that rail, I've got it down to putting a full kilogram on there, and it's only deflecting like 8 thousandths of an inch, which over the time of a print, because it's not happening all at once like I do when I set it on, that's not very much. You're talking an angular deflection on a full height print of, I don't know, I'd have to do the math, but not very much.
The primary issue is not deflection, because most people don't really print stuff that heavy.
Right.
The primary issue is vibrations. So even the printer itself moving can sometimes make that bed just go, and then you get inconsistencies in extrusion. Or if you have another printer sitting on the table with it, yeah.
All right, and so the other half of this for Evan. So you're obviously not going to get a direct drive aftermarket kit tomorrow, even if we suggested to Creality they do it and they did it, right? So part of what you're talking about is the extrusion issues as you get higher. That's accumulated tolerance of your flow rate being off, or your extrusion multiplier. See my help guide for how to set your E-steps, and your flow rate. And there's also, if you want to look into it on Thingiverse, I have a mod for the hot end that captures a piece of tubing, making for cleaner extrusion to go along with all that to get nice crisp extrusion and not have those issues that you're finding with that.
I just realized I completely misinterpreted his question. He wasn't talking about dual drive for the Z-axis. He was talking about dual drive for the feeder unit. And that is available. It's $15 on Amazon.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. There we go.
There we go.
So we got you more answers than you even asked questions for. We're efficient here. So yeah, the dual extruders. So some of the Pro series are now coming with an aluminum extruder, which is nice. That was my biggest ask. I'd like to see them all have it, but I don't know if we want to. The users will support the extra cost. But
Well, how much more would it cost? $1?
Yeah, I'm not sure how it all plays out.
You could buy them on Amazon for $10, so I can't imagine their cost is very high.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, it depends. And then also, so not to create a sub issue or whatever, but those dual gear extruders, I like them. But if you do not grease them regularly, that either gear will start digging into the frame because it doesn't have a support bearing on the bottom. So you either need to self-file and give a little clearance and put like a little plastic washer with some grease, or if you have a friend that can mill it out and add a thrust washer, or however you want to do it. There's different ways to do it. Tiny Machines, a Creality reseller, offers a pre-machined replacement part for that, so you can contact them for that as well.
I would love to see them perfect that design and just use it across the board and everything.
Yeah, it's
just so much better.
A great extruder. The only thing better than that, in my opinion, is getting that gear reduction effect of like the BMG style, where you get the 3-to-1 and the dual gear, because that reduces the amount of steps that are seen for each movement. So you get less of that movement artifact in the surface. And I know it's only you and I and a few other people that would really notice that. But in the end, once you start to get into that minutia, you can actually, with a standard stepper, single driven, you can lightly see where the stepper impulses are as the plastic's being extruded.
Oh yeah, on a super clean print, I did a I don't know where I got it from, but I got this ABS material from somebody that just printed like golden silk. It was just amazing, and I noticed this teeny tiny artifact on the surface of the print that I didn't see in other prints. And when I was looking at it, and I was looking at the extruder, and I realized that the artifact distance was the gear separation distance of the feeder wheel. Yep. I was like, holy crap.
Yeah, when you get them fine-tuned, you can do that. So my eye on you, whatever. So the Ender 5 Plus is not storing the Z setting when leveling the bed. Okay, so I got a chapter coming up in my guide for that. But if you guys will be patient with me, I'll try and orally explain it really quick for this guy, and maybe other people will benefit from it, okay? So here's the deal. Even with the Creality firmware or Tiny Machines firmware, with the separate touchscreen setup, the firmware is set up to register the Z offset using the leveling menu icon that's a Z only level. If you clear the value out by doing an M851Z0 M500 with a cable attached using Pronterface or Repetier or any other thing, you can even do it through Cura. It just doesn't give you feedback whether or not it worked. So you zero it, you go to that menu, you tell it to do the cycle, it's going to cycle. Once it's done, you use the up and down arrows and bring it till you touch it off on paper. It will register the Z offset there. Then the additional part that sort of plays into that whole puzzle is people run into problems with using the G29 or G28 with that setup, right? And the problem there is they think that they need to have a G29 and a M420S whatever value to call out the mesh. This firmware does it in both incarnations. So when you go to do it, you turn on the mesh switch, slide it on, let it do a mesh, and then just put a standard G28 in the beginning of the program. It'll automatically do a reference and call that data out. You don't got to do all the special stuff on it. So it's nice that it does it, but if you read all these other places that don't understand that that's been macroed in, it'll cause you problems trying to work that out. So then the tail or final part of this is once you've got the main offset set, then you can go while it's running and use the live Z to do those very fine tunings of the first layer.
Now, I know when I did my Ender 5 Plus, if I adjusted the Z offset in the leveling menu and did not adjust it in the print live adjust menu, I was fine. Has that been fixed, or is that still an issue?
So as long as you set it at the thing that I just said, at that thing, and don't set it anywhere else, you'll be fine. What happens is there's somewhere there's a ghost in the firmware, and I haven't been able to sort it out, right? So the ghost in the firmware is if you do it in the wrong areas and enter it, it adds 1.8 millimeters to it. I don't know why that number is significant. I don't know if that was the estimated factory value for what it should be from the sensor to the nozzle, and that was sort of going to be like the default starting place or whatever. But if you do it in the wrong order, it adds that 1.8 millimeters, and then you crash your nozzle into the bed, and then everybody gets upset and all that stuff. To do like I said, just zero out the offset, the M851Z0, M500 to store the new value, which is 0. And then go to that leveling menu, use only that spot to do your initial Z offset, and you won't have any more problems. And then there was another question in the question things that I saw that I was going to speak to. Where did it go? Fan replacement. So Christian asked about for fan replacement. I see yellow and blue wires. Which one is positive and negative? So this comes up a lot. So in sort of the international wiring code, yellow and red are the positive wires in those applications. So it'll be yellow and blue, which is positive yellow, blue negative, or red positive, black negative. So El Mariachi, I'm going to butcher names tonight. Sorry for that for anybody that's I messed your name up too bad. So he says lithium-based grease is the #1 choice for anything pure metal-based. Yeah, I would agree for that for the extruder that we were talking about earlier. For the linear rails and anything else, I very much so like either silicone spray with PTFE, or my best preference is the PTFE liquid on its own. You don't even need the silicone part, but it will not dry out under use. You find anything that you would like to speak to, Chris?
Todd Mustachio, are you talking about the Z-seam, the little zits that form up the print? On the assumption that you are, in fact, I might have an example I can show you. Does this even have a Z-seam? Actually, they did a pretty good job of hiding it on this print. Wow.
Yeah, I can't find the Z-seam that you had.
Yeah, if you can't find the Z-seam, that's impressive.
Yeah, that means that you got your flow rate.
We'll assume it's something like this, a seam.
Mm-hmm.
But that's natural. You can't get rid of it. You can reduce it, you can diminish it, but you can't get rid of it, because the nature of 3D printing is that you are stopping, beginning extrusion, drawing a line, stopping, and retracting. So no matter how perfectly, he's talking about something else.
But we're getting clarification on what he's asking.
Because he just said no, so he's thinking about something else. So can you clarify?
Vertical line artifacts. So he might be talking about either more or just being able to see the stepper values on X and Y as you go up a large wall.
I doubt he's making a print where you can see that.
Yeah,
even 99% of my prints, you can't see that unless you really look for it.
Yeah. That's the only other thing I could think of. But anything to do with that, as long as your eccentric wheels are adjusted right, so you don't have slop, and they're not so tight that you're putting flat spots in your wheels, causing it to go thump, thump, thump. That's really bad. Then everything after that is really down to extrusion, to getting that nice clean extrusion. And the reason everybody on the Facebook groups are starting to get really annoyed with me just talking extrusion, but the #1 weakness in extrusion, if you don't use my special fix, is that PTFE pulls a little bit away from the nozzle. It doesn't have to be much. I mean, we're talking, a little tiny void, and it puts just enough drag in there to affect your retraction. And and your overall flow. And the little artifacts will show up at the Z seam. It'll show up at a restart. If you're using combing, it'll look like a different colored plastic after you return from combing on prints and Cura, and little artifacts like that. And it's just that little bit of drag happening right there in your molten pool inside of your hot end.
There's two other sources of vertical lines that I can think of. One would be a default Cura setting that prints infill first and then outer perimeters. This can cause the outer perimeters to bump out because the infill is already hardened. So you always want to do perimeters first, then infill. Another vertical line, what was the other one?
Yeah, you can definitely see it when the infill runs into the outside if your wipe distances are off.
Yeah, it'll be the shape of your infill.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He said he sent a picture to me, but I don't see it yet.
Okay. So while we're waiting on that, 88th asked, when are we going to see printers
covered by patent? Can't do it yet.
Yeah. Well, the portable printers with heated and enclosed build chambers. Will Creality work on one? So I can't speak for their engineering department because I don't know exactly what's happening with that. Right now, Stratasys just got their patent extended through however they managed to do it with the patent office, because they extended past the initial patent for the right to own that technology that is a heated chamber. So at least for another couple of years till that patent expires and it becomes public domain, unless somebody's paying money to Stratasys, they will not be providing fully heated chambers because that is against trade.
So you can do it. You can make a heated chamber.
Yeah, you can do it at home, but you can't.
Creality can't sell you one.
Yep. And there's even, I mean, I think they've defended that patent well enough that even if they sold a kit with like a heater that wasn't hooked up, they would actively pursue the manufacturer for doing that. So that's where we're at.
They couldn't really pursue Creality, but they could maybe affect their sales here.
Yeah. So there's that. So do we have any outstanding questions hiding out there, Ben? Ben's been quiet. He didn't even have to introduce himself. He got over easy earlier. So the guy on the computer, that's Ben Liu. He's my main contact with Creality. He helps me help you by providing me with printers of the different types, so that if there's quirks to learn about them, I can learn about them and help the people in the community use them better.
Yes, El Mariachi, technically that would be illegal to sell in the U.S. since the U.S. That technology is covered by a patent. The most likely reason for PLA curling up on the first layer of PEI, that's going to either the PEI has not been cleaned, the PEI is not hot enough, or you have too much squish and you're going too quick.
Yeah, you described it a different way, but I was going to say the nozzle's too close to the bed because it basically causes a cup that makes it roll right back off the surface.
It just
and then I'll add one to that.
It right back up.
I'll add one to that, and this is in general for first layers. If you got a big print, it's very important to you. Everybody wants their prints done yesterday, right? Driving some people to get multiple printers or whatever. But if you don't hear anything else other than this tonight, listen to this. Don't go fast on your first layer. That's your bonding layer to the surface.
Slow, 15, hot, and sticky.
Yeah, 15 to 20 millimeters a second is like max. Can go slower. I wouldn't go much slower than like 8 because that's just sort of getting silly. But anyhow, but you want to be in that 10 to 15 millimeter 20 max for your first layer if you want good bonding. You just aren't going to get better bonding if you go too fast. That's the one time we want the heat to go through the nozzle, through the plastic to the surface underneath.
Put it this way, there's plenty of large prints that I do where the first layer takes 30 or 40 minutes.
Yeah.
It's just, 220 Celsius, 10 or 15 millimeters per second, slow, hot, and sticky. And it works. As long as that part stays put. And don't be afraid to use a brim.
So somebody was asking about the brand of the PTFE I was recommending. So I need to get stock
3-in-1
if I'm going to start recommending them. But I use 3-in-1. You can find it at Lowe's or Home Depot. I know for sure all the Lowe's carry them. If you buy it at Lowe's, it's like $4 and change. If you buy it on Amazon, they're really proud of it. I think it's closer to $7 or $8 US to have it delivered from Amazon. But if you can't get to a store, it's available, right? But I use that. My personal maintenance schedule for that is once a month I just go through all of my printers and I put a few drops on the Z leads on all of them. I don't personally ever service the bearings. If the bearings go bad, I'll service them. But I think in my whole time of printing, with having owned 15 or 16 printers now, I've replaced 2 bad bearings in those POM wheels. So it's not really a very often.
Not common. Yeah.
And I think one of those early on might have even been me over tightening something with the Eccentric, and I replaced it for the wrong reason, but that's a whole nother story. All right, so more questions?
What was it? Robert Pierce. Do you recommend PEI or a different glass plate for the CR6 SE? The nice thing, one of the things I like about the CR6 SE is that the plate's removable. So I'm, of course, going to put a piece of Wham Bam on there with a standard sticker, you know, the fake tack build surface, because I like turning off the heat bed. You can put anything you want on there, literally.
Yeah.
And
the nice thing is with its automatic leveling, you can change bed thicknesses print to print. As long as you do a reference back, it'll automatically level it again.
Because it understands true zero, you can change the bed, you can change the nozzle. It doesn't matter. You just hit auto level. It'll do its probing and you're done.
All right. So when we can work it in, Chris, we had talked about this offline at some point, but maybe we'll work in when it feels right about how people have a misunderstanding about the estimated first layer height in the machine versus the actual mechanical Z height and all that stuff. I think that could be a good conversation to have for people to learn stuff.
Because it works a little differently on the 6SE.
And I saw. I'm sorry, I'm not ignoring the guy that's asking about whether or not I've gotten the 6SE. I don't know what point it is in the process. They didn't do as many pre-done ones, and as much as I enjoy my relationship with Creality, I wasn't as important as some of the other people that already got them, and I'm okay with that. But I haven't got mine yet. It'll get here eventually, and I'll go through it and do my thing. But from what I can see, because I've seen what Chris did and some other people did, there's not a whole lot to change or help people with on that one. Which is, I'm calling that yay team Creality, because it's sort of nice that it doesn't have any.
And thank you for using regular nozzle threads. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, the CR10 Max, the CR10 S Pro, and also what is it, the CRX, all use that fine thread nozzle, and yeah, that creates a lot of grief for the users that have those. The cool thing, I'll mention something that I came across just in my own personal travels recently, is one of the things that I liked about those nozzles, because like my CR10 S Pro, I don't think I've ever changed the nozzle out, and I've had that pre-production unit for over 2 years now, right? So there's a company now, and I'll have to look on Amazon to figure out who they are again, but they're making the same thermal mass nozzle shape in one that fits your standard Ender series printers, any of the standard thread printers. So I bought up a bunch of those. I got like 20 of them, so I could swap all of my units over to them. So that was sort of a nice find, because I've been looking for them for a while and I couldn't ever find them, but now they're available. Somebody filled that niche for me.
Trying to see what he asked about nozzles on the Kickstarter, so I'm trying to look that up for him.
All right, just really quick, since I teased it earlier and it seems like we got a fair amount of people here. So part of the tease is absolutely nothing to do with Creality, but this week on Monday, I was able to go and pick this thing up from a purchase off of Facebook Marketplace. It's a Stratasys 2000 series printer. It's literally 20 years old, but it's fully operational. So it has the heated chamber that we were talking about earlier, that they hold the patents for or whatever. It is operational. I have had it up and running. I haven't been able to run G-code because I got to come up with the right computer to hook the serial port up to. But once that happens, I won't be doing it like on the main Creality Facebook page or whatever, but peek around what I'm doing or whatever, and I'll probably have some video and some stuff talking about my experience with working with more of a commercial class printer. So that was sort of a fun purchase. Oh, and the score for me was, I almost felt bad bringing the guy down on the price, because he was asking $600 for it, which was already sort of a steal. And I gave him $300 for that printer. So that was, I could probably scrap the components out for more than that. So I'm calling that a win.
The nozzles that come with the Kickstarter is just regular brass 0.4 millimeter nozzles, as far as I can see on the listing. So nothing special there. And someone else asked, Coral Johnson. You have to remember that 3D printers are a very DIY hobby. So that's like being given a bandsaw and a table saw and a hacksaw and a hammer and some wrenches. You know, none of those things do anything on their own. You have to do the work. Now, the CR6 SE is one of the more refined printers available, and it does actually do some of the work for you. The fact that it can sense true zero actually takes care of a lot of the headaches of getting going in 3D printing, but it is a DIY process. But just remember, it's a machine. It's just parts. It's not a big deal. As you learn, as you gain experience, you'll have no problem fixing it. If you can put together IKEA furniture, you can fix a 3D printer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's lots of community support for doing that kind of stuff. So this is the nozzle wrench for that machine. I don't know if you can see how big that nozzle is, but the wrench flats are probably around 3/4 of an inch. It's still a 1.75 filament diameter, but it's a bimetal nozzle that's set up to run commercially or whatever. But I thought that was sort of neat. I mean, I open up the toolkit. My son's like, "What's that for?" And I'm like, "I bet it's for the nozzles." He's like, "No way!" And then I pulled out the nozzles, and he's, "Oh."
And one last thing: do not modify the printer. Okay, just build it, just use it, and when you become competent enough that you could maybe slightly help somebody else with their 3D printer, then consider modifications. Yeah. But just use it like it is first, and that's it.
Yeah, I see people daily. They pre-buy all these mods that I hear people talking about, thinking that they're upgrades, right? So let's have a quick talk about that, Chris. Between you and I, we're sort of known in the community for being really good at maximizing the potential of these printers. And I want to talk just a little bit about the fact that, you know, it is cool that you can do some upgrades to these, but are you getting a better print when you're done with adding all this stuff? I see people all the time. I've got the aftermarket motherboard. I've got all these other fancy things. I put linear rails on it, and their prints I would be ashamed to share. You know, and don't take me wrong. I mean, not everybody does perfect prints. I get it. But they're like doing all these quote unquote improvements, and when they're done, that printer will not work as good if you just follow my guide or other people's guidance on the proper assembly, doing some basic things to get your extrusion going, and just leave it alone.
Well, let me explain why that is.
Yeah.
The reason that is the case is because modifications do not make a printer better. Modifications in almost all cases are a unique fix for a unique issue one person had. Now, if you take a high compression Hemi engine and you put it in a Geo Metro, you've still got a Geo Metro. Okay, and if you have a Corvette with a broken axle and you put a brand new high performance engine in it, you've still got a Corvette with a broken axle. It's not going to drive any better no matter what you do to the engine because you haven't fixed the broken axle. So when you have a printer that's giving you problems, modifications aren't going to fix that problem. You have to fix what's wrong with the printer first. And then if you have an issue that a mod can address, then apply the mod. But otherwise, you need the printer to work properly first because you have no idea, did the mod make the printer worse, or did something you put together wrong make the printer worse, or did you not do something right?
I can give a really good example of that. So not that I had to earn my way in, but part of the reason that TH3D appreciates me is they get people that have bad kinematics, meaning their machine's not operating properly on the repeating of the X gantry to the bed. And I taught people, or am teaching and have the things set up to be able to fix that because they think that, oh, just throwing an ABL system on there will make it better. And it won't. If you're not repeating, coming back to the bed each time the same, you'll measure it once right with the probe, you'll leave and you'll come back to a different height and it'll all be a mess again. That's the kinematics that we're talking about. And I know kinematics is a big word, but it really is the best way of
means motion system.
Getting all of everything working properly together. For my tuning on that stuff. I'm basically trying to get all the twisting forces off of those wheels in that assembly. And I go through a very specific order of doing things to do that. And when you're done, you'll have it running as smooth as, basically humanly possible. And I'll say props to Chris, because I didn't take all of that from your guidance, but I did learn from you early on when I first got my first Ender 3 before I was a thing anywhere else. So thank you for that.
Now, if Creality wants to make me a really, really happy critter, they'll take a lot of these improvements that they made that I've been screaming at them to make for years now that are present in the CR6 SE, and they'll apply them across their entire product line. For example, the Ender 3, one of the primary reasons the Ender 3 is a problem and the Ender 5 is not a problem is because the Ender 3 is able to be put together incorrectly. You can assemble it and it'll be assembled, but the parts aren't aligned correctly. One of the reasons the Ender 5 is my favorite beginner printer is because it's self-aligning. As you assemble the parts, it pulls itself into the correct alignment. Well, they fixed that with the CR6 SE. One of the things I've been telling them to do is I was like, just rip off TiVo, copy it. Put the CNC grooves in the frame so that when you put that thing together, it's the exact place it needs to be, and it worked perfectly. I didn't have to tweak a thing on the 6SE when I put it together.
And there's a second part of that you and I were talking about, where I think we got it fixed in manufacturing. We had a machine that was cutting the end of the rails just a little bit out of square, and with that straightened out, that helps a lot too. It doesn't seem like much, but you get a couple thousandths or a couple, whatever, a small amount of
binding up.
You start pitching the vertical rails, and then you pull the vertical rails, and then it twists the base rails, and then you just got this stress build up in the assembly and whatever. So yeah,
if they could maintain that level of quality control and those little tiny enhancements across their product line, these printers would go together like Legos.
Yeah. So Ben's, I think, talking to that guy Colby in the chat. So I don't know if you ordered from Creality proper or from Creality shop. I really think that you ordered from Creality shop, because as far as I know, Creality hasn't been pre-selling units that weren't ready for delivery. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure on that. So if you order from Creality.shop, they have their own sort of user group on Facebook. I'm in there just trying to help people that are struggling to even get basic support after the sale, right? Just as a public service. But anyhow, whether it was from Creality or not, they're still recovering from a manufacturing standpoint from the COVID. They're getting people back to work. All their vendors have to get everything flowing. I saw
Their
Ben
supply
do that
chain.
walk through the other day at the warehouse. They got lots of units put together that are starting to go into circulation. But it's frustrating for sure. But it's happened. And the biggest frustration with that .shop place is they literally sold units they didn't even have a clue when they were going to be delivered to them, and they have been admonished for that, and sort of professionally corrected, if you will, from Creality. They've been trying to be more attentive to their.
Okay, so thank you. Look, yeah, and call by, if I could call name correctly, if I pronounce it not right, yeah. So I just have information back that you do buy from Creality's Radio Official and have Ender 5. Yeah, you are right. You just said that over a month for replacement of power supply that you can't use it, and so we all should think that story before we tell you to be patient. Yes, yeah, I fully understand that it's always that said that it's a numbers of the company, and yes, and but to you it's 100%. You just waiting for the power supply, and I do got the warehouse department checking for me, and they said that it's already on the way, but it's maybe still not on the plane because it's a special time lately. So yeah, I also have the same answer. It's not anything new, but it has to be wait. I'm really sorry, and if any updates, I will let our colleague follow closely. That if any other update have in the process of shipping, we will update to you, especially because yeah, a month is it's just sorry, no excuse. It's just with a delay. So, but temporarily we could not do anything to let it move more quickly. We just could only tracking for you and since we already ship it out due from our warehouse. It's just not maybe the info not update for the real express, but we will keep an eye for it. And sorry, okay.
Well, a
Right,
suggestion for people ordering from China. You have to remember you're ordering from someplace 15,000 miles away around the world. This is not the information you want to hear, but it's the information you need. If time is critical and you need something to be operational and you're ordering from overseas, well, buy the replacement part yourself. Go on Amazon, pay the $35, buy the power supply, your printer will be operational in 4 or 5 days. Still ask Creality for the replacement, and when you get the replacement, you'll have a spare. But that's the nature of a time crunch. You know, if I need to get a printer running.
He did talk to Ben previously, and he thought it was being handled, and I can understand the distress about that. There's a lot of stuff going on that way too.
1-2 month delays suck. I know.
Yeah. I personally, as much as they will support me for helping me with what my needs are, if I need anything under several weeks time lead or whatever, I'll just buy it myself. That's just the way it works.
It's the nature of ordering overseas, especially during a pandemic. I mean, it's just your 2 and 3 week wait time is now a 6 and 8 week wait time. It sucks. It's not right, but there's also not much they can do.
Right.
Just gotta work the problem.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I really think that is a practical way for you all. That I know that frustrating, but if that printer city and I think Chris Nerys suggestion really awesome, and I will also suggest that since it's already stuck here, and maybe if you have that budget, you could buy from Amazon or some other place to quickly get it and get it running, and you still could ask our replacement. And if you even think our is wrong and we do it wrong, so for the delay, so there is maybe some compensation for that delay. So since delays, I could see that from official store because I'm also in charge of that store in a whole general. So anyway, just yes, because you use it is the main purpose. So if you could have that budget for the power supply under replacement, you could buy it first, and then you could continue to let us do the resend. Thank you. Okay.
Kevin and Mike, they kind of do have American warehouses. It's called Amazon. The problem is the way that works is Amazon has something called FBA. A manufacturer sends a shipment of stuff to the Amazon warehouse. Amazon holds and stocks it, and then when you order it, it gets shipped in 2 days from an Amazon warehouse. But when this pandemic started, Amazon shut down their FBA ingress process. So you could buy stuff Amazon already had, but Amazon was not accepting new shipments of stuff from manufacturers to put into the warehouse because they were prioritizing their shipments of things for critical necessities and essentials. I believe they're starting to open that back up again. I'm not 100% sure on that, but that's the reason you ran out of stuff in the US. Once those parts supplies on Amazon wore out. So you combine this with the fact that the Chinese country was shut down and they weren't producing anything, and Amazon wasn't accepting anything, even if they had it to send to them. Well, that supply chain ran dry.
Right.
So now we're stuck in a situation of waiting for that supply chain to refill itself.
Yeah, and also, my eye on you that says stop parsing. Yeah, you are in the right point. Also, I think in the EU, the European. So yes, we not why we send from China is means yes, we do not have the stocks parts. Yeah, actually we have most printers. I think maybe 90% printers stocks in US. Whether you buy from any reseller, I think recently, but
So
parts for accessories is we not stock that much. That's all categories of parts to US or to the EU market. So we send from China. That's why it takes long. Because
So let me try and get what Ben's trying to get at, right? So there's two things. One, your warranty is actually set up to be administered by the reseller. They're going to be at a point closer to you to give you your stuff, right? And the reason they did that is because if they set up a U.S. warehouse where they could just ship stuff from there to you to administer that warranty, then you can start paying like Prusa-like prices for that service, right? So you got to have a choice. You either get the better deal overall, or you pay more upfront to have service like that. And the
that's
market
where-
has shown them that that's not a profitable way to go. So they're doing their method. And it sucks when we're in this situation. But generally speaking, the vendors that are the resellers have a stock. They do have stock of parts for repair to get to you from a closer function without having to do the overseas route. But that all got disturbed by what happened.
Now, there is a middleman you can work with to do exactly what you want, but you're going to pay the price for that. They're a very good, respectable company. I would suggest them to anybody. You have a company called Tiny Machines. Tiny Machines gets these machines and parts from China. They assemble them. They correct any issues with them. They make sure they're working properly, and they provide you with support and warranty coverage. But you're going to pay a premium price for that because, well, they have to make their income as well. So if you were to order from them, you would have that kind of support, although they're going to run into the same supply chain problem everybody else is because of the pandemic. But you're going to pay a different price. You're going to pay a couple extra $100 for the printer because you're paying for that support.
Yeah, but also with like Tiny Machines or whatever, they have what I would call an upgrade service, right? So not only are they going to receive it for you, they're going to upgrade the extruders. They're going to do the upgraded firmware. They're doing other services for that. You're getting a bargain from them when you get it for that price. I mean, I don't have it happen very often, but I have people send me printers to work on to upgrade them for them or fix things for them. And it's not inexpensive, right? So just the shipping costs can be anywhere from $50 to $120 for a unit, one way to me and then back to them, right? And I'm really nice to people. I just basically charge them for parts and whatever. And if they choose to give me a little bit extra, that's fine. But it's still not inexpensive, right? And there's, I think Tiny Machine offers services similar to that with theirs, and they warranty theirs similarly. So there's that.
And also remember, there is a surge in demand for 3D printers and filament and materials. If anybody's been looking at this material online, you're going to see there's a bit of price gouging going on from resellers. That's because a whole bunch of us are printing a whole shitload of these things.
Yep.
Okay, and so there's a huge demand for 3D printers and filament right now, and that's also depleting supply lines. I mean, I know someone who got fed up with Ender 5 Pluses. They just sold the two of them for $1,800.
Right. Yeah,
that's how badly people want them.
Yeah, and then also to boot, before COVID, I had heard through my industry sources that they were starting to see a supply issue for the primary materials for making PLA. And we could see potentially, there's no industry announcement about this, and I don't even know if it's going to go this way because I'm just hearing little bits here and there, right? But there is a possibility that there's going to be a drive to go to other types of plastics that are more available and in that price range that people are willing to pay. And we may not be using a ton of PLA later because the stock is not available. And I'm not saying, don't go panic buying a bunch of stuff off of that. I'm just saying that there is an imbalance there right now.
And Chan Drab asks, what extras do you recommend for a novice CR6 SE buyer? I recommend buying a few rolls of filament, buying some 91% alcohol spray, paper towels, buying a 1-inch chisel and a nice knife, a little $10 tool set like that with a couple of sockets on it. You basically convenience of life things that'll help you make it easier to work with the printer.
So it's not that you don't necessarily have to buy like these are Nipix pliers. They're like $45 pliers, but a pair of channel locks and one of these for addressing your hot end because you want to support the hot end while you're working on it. And these are slip jaws, so you can actually get sort of hold of the outside of it. But yeah, you want to hold the jaw while you're doing it. This keeps you from burning your fingers on the nozzles. Nobody wants to burn their fingers. And most places you can get inexpensive, like the most part stores, you can get a kit that has something like this for maybe what, 15 or 20 bucks or something, whatever. Get it on Amazon, it'll be less, obviously, or whatever. I'm not going to source people, but people don't think about it. They're like, oh, I got this wrench, that's the tool to do it. No, there's better tools available. And if you look around some of the suppliers, vendors that sell these aftermarket parts and whatever, they have tool kits for 3D printing, which will have additional stuff like this, extra nozzles, whatever their kit happens to have, a better scraper, better flush cuts. You can get specialty kits.
Just don't try modifying the printer. Learn how to use it first.
Yeah, so the Enter 5 Plus, there's more demand than there is units for sure. I get people every day. Where can I find them? I had a guy the other day. He asked me, where can I find Enter 5 Plus? So saw a guy post that there was 5 units available from some source that he found. By the time I talked to him and he got back to me, all 5 of those were gone just like that. Right?
He's talking about extras from the Kickstarter. I'm not sure. I'm still trying to find a list of the extras.
Yeah, so don't hate me, but I haven't been keeping up on the incentive things on the Kickstarter or whatever. That's just not, I haven't had the energy to do that.
I don't see a spot where I can see what it is.
Look, possible to share your link of your guide, because they're in so many places, I think. But could you share a link here for people to find your guide and to
I'm copying it right now. Sorry.
Yeah.
And we'll put it in there. So that's the newest, or should be the permanent location for it now. The server had a name update or whatever, so that's the current location. And if you can't find it there is a link to the help guide also at the Creality official site in the firmware section at the very bottom, I think, of the page or whatever. But there's 1 or 2 places where it shows up on the Creality site as well. And I got a rewrite coming. I'm working really hard. Some people may not have noticed, but I'm spending a little less time in the groups as I'm preparing my rewrite of the guide to add additional helpful information for specific issues and stuff. So don't hold me to any specific timeline, but I'm hoping in probably about 3 months to do a rewrite that's more on the grade of adding the additional materials and working towards what could almost be an ebook with a little bit better quality stuff. And we'll see how close I come to that goal. But it'll at least have additional material and some more editing done to it.
Okay, it looks like I found the list here. The add-ons, they have looks like it's plated copper and hardened steel nozzle kit, as well as a PEI build surface, steel plate, mag plate, as well as an enclosure that's available. So I would definitely go with the nozzles, especially if you think you want to print with any kind of carbon fiber or glow in the dark filaments. And of course, I love flexible build surfaces, so I would definitely go with that. And you sure as hell can't beat $31.
Yeah. All right. So talking about that stuff. Welcome, Richard Cook. How goes it? It goes pretty well for me. So I'm not making a big deal about it in the groups, but some people may know, some may not. But I have my oldest son is now on the backside of treatment for a tumor that he had on his leg. So it was a tumor about the size of a large chicken breast on the back of his calf. Fortunately, it was between the soft tissue and the muscle. And so he had three rounds of chemo plus radiation, then the surgery to remove it, and he just finished the post-surgery first round of chemo. He's got 2 more week-long sessions with breaks or whatever, and then his treatment will be done. But that's been a little bit of a distraction in the background. So.
Well, you don't have to buy through Kickstarter. You can always buy an Ender 3 off Amazon or something like that. Or you can wait until after August and then buy it directly.
Yeah. All right.
But this is the nature of Kickstarter. I mean, it's what they chose to use for this.
So Alex with the Russian last name. Sorry, I can't pronounce the Russian name very well. So Alex, there's a thing in my guide for if your belts on your return loops are not going down the center of the rails, you can basically loosen your, so you got a support that's got a bearing on it, and your belt comes around and goes back, right? You can actually change the pitch of the belt riding on that by putting paper between the frame and the bracket, depending on which way you need to go, either at the front or at the back, and turn it so it tracks properly between the rails. It's in the help guide. You got to really look for it, but it's in there. And I might do some more with that later. But there is a way to correct that. There's also, I'm not a huge fan of it, but it is available. There's a print that, at least for the 2-piece bearing setups, where you can introduce basically a plastic shim that goes on the sides of the belt that will help keep the belt more centered in the pulley. That's another way. I'm not a big fan of it, but it's available. So if that's more your speed than trying to tip that bracket, it might be a way to fix it. I don't know who's Mark Olivier, whatever your last name is. No offense. He says that the PI by Creality isn't as good as the original maker of the material. I don't know where you got that from. So I have PEI from Wham Bam. Well, I have PX from Wham Bam. I have PEI from 3 other manufacturers and Creality, and theirs is on par with everything that's available in the market right now. If you're hearing people have problems with it, they either aren't cleaning it well or they're not following some of those tips we gave earlier about going slow on your first layer, making sure all your hand oils are off, and all that kind of stuff. And along that vein, I'm just going to put this out there. Don't put your hands on your bed if you can help it at all. When you put hand oils on the bed, and even if you got, isopropyl alcohol, like I have ISO kicking around my shop, right? You do want to have ISO so you can clean stuff up. But this is only if I make a mistake and touch the bed. This is not a cure-all, right? So if I have problems with adhesion, I'm going to take a 50-50 mix of vinegar and water, or if the bed's removable, I'll take it to a soap and water source at like the kitchen or whatever, and I'm going to clean it with a degreaser and or a surfactant to get the oils out of the bed. What happens is with the ISO, you'll get the stuff that's on the surface, but there's stuff that's literally gone into the micropores of the plastic. When you heat that plastic to 200 degrees Celsius with your material, it heats it up. It's just like putting oil in a frying pan. When you put oil in the frying pan, once it gets the temperature, it goes out and gets everywhere, right? You're doing the exact same thing to your bed if you're getting your hand oils into the bed. I'm not saying you got to wear surgical gloves every time you get around your bed, although it's not a bad idea, especially if you got really oily hands. But if you're having adhesion problems, especially in a very specific area of your print bed, take the time to clean it.
One of the reasons I love the flex steel plates is I can take the print off and pop the print off. I keep just standard dishcloths handy. These are microfiber dishcloths. You buy them at Walmart, like 25 cents a piece, right? And I use these when I grab the bed and I flex it. This way I'm never putting my oils on the bed, and it reduces how often I have to sit there and scrub the damn thing.
Mm-hmm.
PEI.
Yeah, so somebody asked, what's the secret? The secret is either a surfactant soap or temperature and like vinegar, which is its own surfactant, and heat. I'm not saying heat it so hot that you vaporize your vinegar, then you're just gonna have a vinegar smelling thing with everything still in it. But warm it up a little bit, get that vinegar and water on there, let it chance to soak for 5 or 6 minutes, then use another cloth to pull it off of there or whatever. And like with the Sulkit beds, I've had people that couldn't get anything to stick to it after I did it. They're like, Luke, what did you do to me? Because now I can't get my prints off of it. Right? It's that big of a difference once you get it cleaned up.
Now, a couple of things about PEI. There's a couple of questions here. First things first, I'm swapping between glass and PEI. With the 6SE, that's actually pretty easy. You could take a piece of glass, the same size that's already on there, and put a piece of PEI on there. Now you can swap between the original surface and the PEI surface just by undoing the clamps, putting your new surface in, and closing the clamps again. You do have to do your level process again because your bed's going to be a different thickness, but that's easy. Just hit auto level, let it finish, you're done. You don't have to change anything else. As far as cleaning glass, alcohol and water is not necessarily going to work on PEI. Glass, you just want hot soapy water. You just take Dawn, hot soapy water, scrub it clean, you're good. But PEI is a little different. You might have to take a little acetone to it, depending on the PEI surface. You also might have to scuff it up a little bit. You don't take sandpaper to it. You take like, triple knot, quad knot, steel wool, and just very gently clean the surface over time. That's going to make it stick harder, and that's where the last problem with PEI comes into play. PEI is a little finicky. When you're printing on a standard Creality bed surface, it's extremely forgiving. You could be too close, you could be too far, too fast, it doesn't matter. It's probably going to stick. PEI is wonderful, but it's a little more picky. My preferred way to, I don't know if it's the best way, this is just the way I do it. My preferred way to print on PEI is to actually have a slight air gap. And I basically drop the hot filament onto the PEI. Very slow, very hot. And that seems to work for me. definitely. The biggest problem is people see a print not sticking, and their instinct is to closer, closer, closer. The problem is closer doesn't work for PEI, because when you get too close, it peels the filament right off the PEI. Your nozzle will actually put down the filament, and it'll peel it off right behind it. When you see that,
I hate to put an exact number on it, but on that whole first layer height thing, because I get people all the time, they're telling me, oh, I got a 0.12 first layer height. And I'm like, you don't know what your layer height is at, because you can't lay a first layer at 0.12 without having it like permanently jammed into the surface or whatever. But the reason I brought that up is I target between 0.26 and 0.28 as my first layer thickness. That's going to be the value set in my slicer for my estimated first layer. Then I'm going to make a print, and I'm going to take the skirt that I printed off, and I'm going to measure it. And if I'm not getting that as my first layer, I'm going to adjust the bed height or the Z offset so that it is. You want those paired up good so that your overall heights are right and all that stuff. Go ahead, Chris. So this question was addressed to Nerys, but I'm going to sort of touch on it a little bit. It says, do you know if the CR6 SE has support on top of the Z-axis like a ball screw? I know some manufacturers don't restrain the Z-screw to reduce lash in case if it isn't machined true. All right, so I don't know specifically about this 6SE. Most of the larger form factor Creality printers have an upper bearing support, and that is what it is. It's a support, not a guide. If you touch them, they have a bearing in there, but that bearing is free floating. It is not restricting movement at all.
No, it's not. It's solid. It's solid, not free floating.
On the 6SE.
So here's the 6SE. It's a new style on the top. The top is rigid.
Okay.
It's not free floating, and there's a belt connecting the two.
Okay, they had to restrict it because of the belt then.
Normally,
so the ones that don't have a connecting belt will have it free floating because you don't want to constrain that Z screw at both ends.
Okay, optimally, as an engineer, you want this constrained as tight as possible.
Yeah.
The reality is most of these machines are not engineered to anywhere near tight enough a tolerance for that to work. So you end up with binding that causes Z-wobble. Yeah. This machine, normally what I would do with this machine is get rid of these bearing blocks and get rid of this belt. But it's working. So I think the machining and engineering is close enough in tolerance, meaning they did a good enough job putting this together that this works.
All right, so there's your answer. So it is constrained on there because of the belt drive system. Any of your other dual Z systems that have bearing supports are floating, because floating is better than restrained if there's no reason to restrain them.
That was mine.
All right. Any other?
So normally that would be a problem for me, but they seem to have got it. It's working, so I'm leaving it alone. Most of the time, the rollers aren't actually shedding material. They're collecting material. Yeah. So you have a rubber and a metal surface, and they're moving. That's going to create an electrostatic charge. That electrostatic charge is going to attract dust. So you can think of your rollers as a vacuum cleaner for the dust in your room. If you take your finger and just on the roller, it should come right off. If the roller is not being deformed, if the shape of the roller looks fine, and when you manually move the surface, the printer. So if you take that print head and you manually move this, as long as that feels smooth, you're probably okay. Now, if you're rolling this and you feel dip, 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 that indicates this is too tight and you could actually be shedding material. But if that's not the case, if that's reasonably smooth and you wipe it off and you don't see nothing wrong with the rollers, you're probably just collecting material.
Yeah.
Now, the way you adjust these is you'll loosen this eccentric nut until this piece wobbles. Same thing with your Y-axis. You loosen that until this wobbles. Then you tighten it a little bit at a time, just a tiny bit, only exactly enough to stop the wobble, then stop, and you're good. I have printers with 5,000 hours using the original rollers. I've never worn one out yet.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a discussion with somebody the other day, and I know a couple of guys that are farming them or whatever, and they're in the 10,000 hour point with the stock POM wheels. If you have dust, it's generally so there. I have a theory on this, right? So this is not proven in science or whatever, but the closer they are to optimal, the less you'll see of the collecting dust, right? But there is a zone between perfectly aligned and over tightened where you'll still collect dust but not be in a bad mechanical position. So
now, dust is largely going to be your environment.
mhm.
At my previous home in Pennsylvania, it was a relatively dusty environment, and all my printers collected a lot of dust. I just take myself a rag as the printer's printing and just go, psh, and it rolls and it takes all the dust off. Here in New Mexico, for whatever reason, even though I live on a dirt road, I don't seem to have as much dust, and I don't have to clean them as often. You can mount a spool holder on top. If you buy the stock spool holder that comes with like an Ender 2, Ender 3, CR10, etc., you can mount that up top on the frame here, but you are going to have the same problem most of us have where this starts to eat away at the plastic or metal going into your filament sensor. The solution for that is actually pretty easy. This is something I would like to see manufacturers actually do, but you could probably do this with a 3D print add-on.
It's my turn to hold one up.
There you go. All you really need to do in Creality, Ben and Corey, you guys can take note of this. What you need to do is to make sure there's a hole right here at the entry point for the filament. And that hole is the exact right size to accept a piece of PTFE tube. You can even put a PTFE compression fitting there if you want. Mm-hmm. And then that little 2-inch piece of PTFE tube will be your sacrificial bend layer for your filament entering. When that wears out, you just replace that little 2-inch piece of tube and you won't be tearing apart your stuff.
I've done that before with the PTFE going in, or I do those in-feed rollers, and then I have the upper guides that I like to put on them as well. And the guy that asked, is it more than just a life happiness thing upgrade to go to that new printer? And it depends on if you struggle with bed leveling and that kind of stuff. If you constantly struggle with that stuff, I would think it'd be a good life improvement. If you got a machine that's dialed in where you can set a print and walk away and not have to worry about the first layer and whatever, other than is that new bed just a little bit bigger, Chris, than the 235, 235?
Yeah, it's 245 by 255 with a 235.
So you get a little bit of more dimension, but that's really a personal decision. I mean, it's cool to have the new toy or whatever, but will it substantially improve your life?
No. Another reason
why, maybe, but other than that, not.
Another reason why bed leveling is so good on this printer is because it no longer uses springs to mount the bed to the carriage. Instead, can you see that there? There we go. Instead, it's using hard mounts. But because it's using hard mounts, they have a whole bunch of hard mounts. And because they have a whole bunch of hard mounts, let me count them. How many are there? I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I see 11 hard mounts. So this is connected on your Ender 3. You have 4 points of contact between the print surface and the carriage plate. This has 11 points of contact between the print surface and the carriage plate, which means the force is distributed over 11 points, which means your bed is never going to be warped. It's going to stay flat.
Nice. Yeah. So Alex, go see my guide or Chris's videos or whatever. You should be able to adjust the the y-axis, which is the bed wheels, to the point where they're not causing you too much trouble.
Well, I'll go over it again really quick. It's super, super easy. You have a wheel with an eccentric nut, and you have a wrench it comes with. The way the eccentric nut works is the hole is offset. So instead of the hole being in the center, which would be an even rotation, the hole is offset. So as you can see, the distance changes based on where you rotate. So it's more of a oval instead of a circle. So when you move the oval further away, you create a gap. When you move the oval closer, you tighten up the gap. So what you do is you loosen the eccentric until the piece wobbles. You want it to wobble. Once you have it wobbling, you tighten it a hair, move it back and forth and make sure it wobbles. Tighten it another hair. Keep doing that precisely enough to stop the wobble. Each time you move that wrench, you should be moving it about this much. Once you stop the wobble, stop tightening. You're done. The purpose is not to be tight. The purpose is to be precise. So it doesn't have to be tight. It just has to not wobble.
You got to remember you're putting a liquefied plastic out of there. It's not a whole lot of force at that interchange between the nozzle and the part if everything's going well.
And because it's liquefied, any noise or vibration you introduce is going to manifest in your print. Right. So if you have it too tight to the point where it's vibrating, wobbling, going up, 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 because you're flattening the wheel, well, you're going to see that in extrusion artifacts in your print.
Yep. All right. So Mark asked, one of the issues I had back in 2011 was filament slipping. Is there a sensor that detects the filament is not moving forward?
Yes
So
and no.
There's manufacturers that are starting to investigate that. And just let me tell you from my own personal standpoint, that would be a neat feature to have. Like I think even some of the Taz professional series have a thing that's sort of monitoring for that. But here's the deal. If you have something in your hot end that's causing a restriction, unless they can pair that with a thing that increases the torque factor to that drive system and can also quantify the volumetric flow that's coming with said changes, it's not going to do any good other than to tell you your part's actively on its way to failing. And most of the time you'll find that out when you look at your part anyways.
Well,
so it's really cool technology, but it's hard to implement causally, helping it actively help the print and process.
Prusa has that in their printers. They actually have the a sensor, an optical sensor that can detect the motion of the filament, so that when the filament stops moving, it can tell and it'll pause the print. With the theory being that you can fix whatever's wrong and resume the print.
Right. So it only takes 16 screws to fully dismantle one of their hot ends. So I got a delivery.
Yeah, I know.
So good luck with fixing that while it's paused.
Yeah.
But
well, usually it's the filament.
Right. So yeah, it would be neat to have, but I don't see it in the consumer grade printers anytime soon to an effect that will help you as a end user.
A way to bypass that problem is to go with direct drive. The reason that isn't even a problem in a printer is because of the Bowden setup. So there's actually a significant gap between the hot end and the feeder unit. So if the filament breaks inside of there or inside of here, there's a separation there. Go direct drive and you basically eliminate that problem.
So Nora has been asking about the firmware for the LD002R. So that was brought to my attention earlier today that some people are actually modding by changing to a different drive system for it because the Cheeto box and the stock firmware, they don't have enough access to customize it for themselves. So I will be giving Ben a message about that and finding out if we can at least get you the source code for the firmware. I don't know if that's going to truly satisfy the problem, but we'll do our best to see what we can do for that. Sort of crazy that they came up twice in the same day for me, but it did.
Slashy YouTube asks, bed leveling is really difficult on the Zender 3. Please help. Bed leveling is not difficult. Bed leveling is non-intuitive. It's the kind of thing where it seems difficult until you get it, and then it's really easy.
Right.
So
I'm going to add a caveat to that, Chris.
Assuming the printer's mechanically okay.
Yeah. So I run into people that by the time they're done messing with bad kinematics, not getting their bed leveled, they can do a paper touch off better than I can, trying to make it work. Hey, Scott, I can't ever say his last name. Scott from Marlin Project. Yeah. Well, good evening, Scott. So anyhow, on that vein, see my guide for the X gantry rework and bed stabilization. That should take out any question on whether your kinematics are working well. And then if you're still having bed leveling issues, either see the guide for assisted bed leveling. It gives you a reference to a G-code assisted bed leveling where it goes around and probes and helps you set it, or see the video from Edge of Tech. Or do you have one, Chris, too? A video on bed leveling?
I was about to say, if you go on to YouTube and do a search for CR10 bed leveling basics, you're going to see a picture of me holding 2 spools of filament up on the screen, and it's a 46-minute video that walks through the basic theory behind bed leveling so that you understand what you are doing, what the process is. And once you get that video, you're going to have like a eureka aha moment, and you're going to run around and level every printer in the house in 5 minutes. But the basics of bed leveling is pretty simple. First, you want to print some. God damn it, stuff is in my way. It kept falling down. You want to print something small like a Marvin, okay? And you want to add a skirt to the Marvin. You want the skirt to be 75% the width of your bed. So you're on an Ender 3, your bed is 220 wide. So half of that is 110, 2/3 of that out. It's about 75. So we're going to do a 75 radius skirt, which is going to be about 150 millimeters. Now, you want to do like 4 perimeters, and you want to do it slow. And you don't want to do squares. Squares don't work. It's a very simple process. When you draw a square with something that's flexible, okay, there's no difference between the line attaching to the bed and the line not attaching to the bed until you touch it. Then you see the difference. But when you draw a circle is going to look like this, while a circle that detaches is going to look like this. It's going to form a tangent between the 2 points where it didn't attach and it did attach. So when you see your circle become a straight line, you instantly know it's not attaching to the bed at that point. That's why you use a circle. You turn your printer down to like 25% speed, and as it's drawing the skirt, literally just take your fingers and feel it. Okay? If it moves when you feel it, you're too far away. If you can feel it and it's staying put, but it feels really flat and smooth, you're too close. It should basically feel like stuck down fishing line. So, you know, grab a piece of fishing line and rub your finger over it. That's what your filament should feel like when you touch it, and it shouldn't move when you touch it. That's it. That's all there is to it.
Then, and also if you have a multiple skirt and you're not doing as much filling with it, if you got a separation between the 2 lines, you're too high.
I wouldn't worry about that. Get it to stick first.
Getting it to stick is first, but yeah.
And also, when it prints a skirt, remove the first skirt. Take your scraper, remove it while it prints the second one, because the first one can help the second one and hide a problem.
So Mark is asking if you should get the Creality flexible enclosure, or I shouldn't say flexible, the Creality assembled enclosure. Gee whiz. If you should have one of those. So yeah, storing your printer, it's not going to hurt to get dust and stuff on it. I definitely recommend taking the filament out if you know you're going to go into a long period of storage. And this is not overnight or even a day or two, but over time that PLA will sometimes get to the point where it cracks, and then you got to try and work it out of the system, and that's really a pain, right? So if you know you're going to be a long time, at the end of your session, heat it up, push to extrude for about 3 to 4 seconds, really hard, and then give it a quick pop back. That'll pull almost all of the plastic out with it. And then just, you know, the next time it's time to print, cut a new end and stick it back in there.
And by the way, the reason PLA cracks when you pull it out of your printer, if you've ever noticed, you pull the filament out of your printer, you're stored on the roll, and you come back a week or 2 later, and the first foot or so of the filament is cracking really easy. And see how this is not cracking so easy? I had to really bend it hard. Well, the reason for that is you've compromised the surface of the plastic. Think of the plastic as a sealed container. And if you compromise that container, you allow moisture to penetrate and get inside that container, because PLA is hygroscopic. But it's not very hygroscopic. As long as that outside container is sealed, it's pretty good. Well, here's the problem. You've compromised the first 1.5 feet of that plastic, because it's gone through that feeder gear, which is grinding notches into it as it pushes the filament in. So that entire stretch of plastic is going to absorb water. It's one of the reasons why you want to remove it when you store it for a long time, because otherwise you'll end up with 100 little tiny pieces of plastic inside your Bowden tube.
Yeah. So, and then Nora's asking about the firmware again with just a parameter sheet. So, Nora, if I can effectively give you a list of the available G code to use with the LD002R, I'll get it to you. Send me a PM on Facebook, and I will look for that. And if I find it, I will give that to you. Yeah. So we'll see if we can get you straightened out with what available G code is there. So on the Creality hot ends are more expensive, so you'd want a heat gun and plastic.
They're $20 a pop. And that's with the heater cartridges and everything.
Yeah. So I would make a general note: if you're cleaning a hot end, whether it's actively heating itself or not, do not use a wire brush anywhere near the heat cartridge and the thermistor. You will definitely take out your temperature monitoring circuit on the motherboard. Nylon brush, if you're going to do it at all. I personally try not to do it at least with it turned on. If you really only have a brass brush from like Harbor Freight or whatever, heat it up then shut the machine off, and while it's still soft and supple, then use your brass brush so you're not actively shorting out your machine.
And another way to clean off a really gunked up hot end is to just turn it up to like 260 degrees and leave it there for a while. Eventually, most of that plastic's going to soften up. Then let it cool down a little bit, lower it down to like 210, 220 until it's still gooey. And you should be able to take, just a simple pair of pliers and grab a piece of that plastic and pull almost the whole thing off as one big piece. Just, wait until it softens. Don't rush it or you're going to tear stuff. You'll tear the wires going to your thermistor. You'll tear the wires going to your heater cartridge. Just take your time. Let it get soft. Start pulling pieces off.
I screwed up. I just put up a comment that was wrong. Let me pull it off. Oh, I don't want to put the user in timeout. All right. Sorry, I just accidentally put the wrong address. I think it's Creality3donline.com is the official.
I was about to say, I didn't type that.
That was me. So we lost Ben and Corey for a moment. I don't know what happened to them. So we got any more questions?
I just consider the Creality hot end to be reliable, so I like using it. Like I got my ANET E12. It's a shitty printer. It worked. First thing I did was tear off the ANET hot end and put a Creality hot end on it. It instantly made the printer better. It's not that it's a great hot end. It's just it's consistent and reliable.
Yeah. Okay, so they got their network knocked them off, and they're not going to come back on. So it's party time. No, I'm just joking. So we'll cover a couple more quick things or whatever, and then we'll wrap it up. I got my food sitting here getting cold for me. That was that disturbance you saw earlier. Stuff came in.
Yeah, Jonathan, I'm cheap too, but I'm cheap with my time and my energy, and I just want to be able to click go, walk away, and have that machine do what it's supposed to do. So I use components that I know how they work and I trust them. If the J5 hot ends work great, fine. As long as you know how to use them, that's the way to go.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to take that last comment that's flagging over us off or whatever. But, so anyhow, we got any open issues to finish up before we roll this out? Somebody, an OJ5 hot end? I wonder if he meant the A5S hot end. I'm doing one more quick look, but I'm feeling an end coming. Sorry for those that are really having a good time, but you guys, you got to give us enough questions to keep things going because nobody wants to watch me go all day.
I've fed about 50 kilograms of plastic. Well, maybe not 50, maybe 40 kilograms of plastic through my Chiron's hot end with a 1.2 millimeter nozzle, and I don't even have a working hot end fan.
All right, so carbon. Let's see if I can put that one up here. Show. So he's asking, was the optical sensor covered? And you missed it. So we have not formally talked about it. So I have pre-opinions, although I haven't physically experienced one. What do you think about the optical sensor?
What is it?
On the 6SE, aren't they using optical end stops?
They use a Hall effect or optical end stop in combination with the strain gauge, but they're talking about something on the site as an add-on. What is this add-on?
I don't know. I don't know enough about the accuracy of the optical end stops to even know if I like them in the application or not.
Well, I prefer them. If we're talking about, see, my printer came with one, so I don't know what they're talking about.
I think some of the preview ones came with stuff that were the upgrades and the Kickstarter.
Oh, okay. Here it is.
Yeah.
Okay, let me see
that's what I'm guessing. But yours probably came with it. Some people may be either doing it as an add-on or as certain thresholds.
Okay, so that must be what I have here. So it looks like that's what I have here. So that is this little sensor, and then this arm pushes through the sensor and activates it.
Right. So the deal with that is it? So I know that you resume prints for doing multi-layer prints, and that's where that kind of stuff would come into play. Because with the mechanical one, if it has a reasonable repeatability, you can actually sort of home it before you go back to make sure that everything aligns from one thing to the other in case you move the head while you're changing the filament or whatever. So that the accuracy of that is going to tell us whether or not that's good or bad. If it's as accurate or more accurate than a lever style, then I'm really going to enjoy it. If it's not, then your restart stuff is going to be suboptimal if it goes
That
back.
shouldn't matter if it's using the touch off on the bed for 0.
No,
I thought
not Z. I'm talking like if it does an XY home, if you got like a power interrupt or whatever, and goes back to the print.
No, they're using switches for that.
Okay, so the opticals only in addition, only as a backup to the pressure sensor.
I believe so.
Okay. So
now I actually can't do my multi-process prints with the CR6 SE. I would have to somehow modify it to not home in the center. Because you can't home in the center and do a multi-G-code file because you're going to home right on top of your print.
So Scott's got a question about the E-steps on the Ender 5 Pro. So Scott, the answer is 400 or 800. The old ones had 400. The new ones have 800. They went to a steeper pitch screws so that they didn't fall down on power off recovery and stuff. So the current production ones are 800. I don't know if you need to put in a comment out for the old 400s if they have an older machine. So hopefully that answers that for you.
Now, Thinker's Bluff here says, during homing with optical sensor failed, head drove into bed. So the strain gauge does not cause it to stop. It needs both.
I don't see how that would work because it's able to pick up the bed height at any height. I think that's an overrun thing just in case the strain gauge didn't work.
That's what I thought. If the strain gauge failed, that would stop it.
Once I have one in my hands, I'll test it. Oh, was I on the wrong axis, Scott? Oh, you're asking about the E-steps for the extruder. Yeah, so the old used to be 93. The actual, in my experience, was 95, but 93 or 95 both work.
I just realized this is easy to test. I'll plug the damn thing and I'll stick something in there.
So I guess what you need to know, Scott, is at a point in production, the Ender 5 Pro had 400 E-steps to move the Z-axis, and then it changed to 800. So that's something to know. But it used to be the old default was 93 with that stock plastic extruder, and they went to the aluminum extruder, which runs closer to 95. So the Pro has the 95 E-steps as its default E-step value, and it's actually pretty close, between 95 and 96.5, depending on how the hop gear was machined. All right. So sorry about the confusion there. I thought, your brain assumes things, whatever. You're asking about E-steps, and I've been dealing with people that are on either side of the change in the pitch on the Z. And a couple of people, unfortunately, got machines that were sent out. They got an Ender 5 or Ender 5 Pro that had the firmware for 400 E-steps with the 800 millimeter lead screw. And you can imagine what kind of problems that was causing those folks as they tried to print, that it was only moving half as much as it needed to. So that is going on out there. My apologies to that.
I'm going to stick a box in here. We're going to see what it does.
Oh, the 120 steps per millimeter thing is for the dual gear one or whatever, I think, Scott. I don't know. But they're not using the dual gear on the Ender 5 Pro or Plus. None of the Ender 5 series have the
okay, it's pushing through the box. It's not stopping. It did not stop when it pushed on the box, unless it's not hard enough.
Yeah, and if you want to talk even more once I'm offline, Chris or Scott, you got my my personal PM available or whatever. We can talk it more in depth. I'll always make time for that. Oh, evidently 3D Maker Noob was live, so my apologies if we stepped on him. We just been sort of trying to do yeah, if they're getting up to that high end Scott, they're having slippage. That's part of the reason why I have people do the free air extrusion method. So it gets to move the filament without pushing through the nozzle, takes all the restrictions out. We know that the filament's moving at the proper stepped value, and then if we have problems after that, it's either a slipping extruder or it's restriction in the nozzle that's causing problems.
Okay, it requires both. If I tell it to home and I push something against the nozzle, it does not stop. If I interrupt the optical beam, it does not stop. If I interrupt the optical beam and put something against the nozzle, it stops.
All right.
So it looks like it's not actually listening to the strain gauge until the optical sensor is within range.
Right,
So
and
I'm
that's why it's
guessing-
got a longer arm, so it has to be activated.
So I'm
Okay.
guessing it's switching between go down until you detect the optical sensor. Once you detect the optical sensor, switch to listening to the strain gauge. So that's how it's working.
All right. Well, yeah, I don't know why they're including the extra one, or if it's intended for another axis, or just to have a backup one as a spare part.
I don't know.
Nobody clued me in on that one. So anyhow,
Because based
So-
on that, they can't use a physical switch for the Z-axis.
mhm.
Because the physical switch is a fixed point, not a range.
Yeah, so it's basically giving it the okay that hey, we're in the range that it's supposed to be. Now you can listen to this.
Yeah. You got it.
All right, with that, Chris, I think I'm gonna wrap it up. My
Okay.
hunger's getting the best of me. I think
Yum,
we've
yum,
answered
yum.
a lot of questions, people, for tonight. I'm glad that we were able to get it output. It'll be available later on to watch on Nerys' channel and on the Creality channel and on Creality Facebook. I didn't put it on my channel because I didn't really need it there, but over time there'll be more of those there. So go ahead and
And
say
just
your
remember, mean people and politicians taste good.
All right. With that, we'll call it a night. Good night, all.
Bye.